Welcome to MamaFuel, the podcast that fuels every mama's heart, soul, mind, and body, and hopefully sparks a few dreams along the way. I'm Ann Ferguson, Chief Nurturer and Mama Mentor at the Centered Mama Project, and your host for this podcast. I'll be sharing real, raw, and often funny conversations with beautiful mamas from around the world to remind you that you're not alone and that you're doing amazingly on this wild journey of shepherding small humans as they make their way on our beautiful planet. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. My name is Ann Ferguson, and as ever, I am delighted to be spending a little bit of time in your ears and hopefully in your heart. And I know that is where we're going to end up with today's guest. Debbi Carberry is an extraordinary being who keeps more balls in the air than I even knew was possible and does it with a grace and a humor and a heart and a can-do attitude that I have rarely witnessed. And I cannot wait for you to hear her. We're talking from very opposite ends of the world. She's in Australia and I'm in Switzerland. And before we start chatting, I'll tell you a little bit for context. Debbi and I met in a membership learning space where we both have memberships that we love and are growing, and we're in a group that are keeping each other motivated and building things. And so she's part of what makes the MamaFuel sisterhood move and grow and evolve, and I'm super grateful for that. And she also, in her spare time, when she's not supporting all of us, she runs 5 businesses, has 4 grown children, a healthy, loving, supportive relationship, gets a massage every 2 weeks, and takes beautiful care of herself and of her clients and of everyone around her. She has a great resume and a CV, but we'll get into that when we start talking. More than anything, I'm just grateful to have Debbi, your heart and your experience and all of your knowledge with us today. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Wow, I have a lot to live up to now.
No pressure.
It is absolutely lovely to come and spend some time with you. I am really looking forward to our chat.
Great. Well, let's get stuck in. So I've already explained that you have a couple things going on, but let's maybe step back to the earlier days. What was your introduction into motherhood? How did you come into this journey?
So, very good question that catches me off guard and is perfect. So basically, I waited till I was nervous about becoming a mum. I didn't have a great childhood. I absolutely thought I didn't have the goods to be a mum. And I came in with trepidation. I was sure if I had boys, I'd be okay, but I was a bit nervous about girls. And I was 30 when I had my first child. I felt like I was pretty ready by then to have my first kid. Sadly for me, and for him, bless him, he's 23 now. He's just going off to Canada tomorrow, but he's 23. And when he came into my world, I really was underdone as a mum. I didn't have the skills that I really needed. And he helped me grow enormously. But he was a colicky baby and a kind of cranky baby, and he didn't sleep through the night. And so I felt a bit like a failure most of the time. Then I had my second child, who was the complete opposite, was the most placid, easygoing, quiet. I thought, wow, this child has been sent from heaven. Like, he just sits and smiles all day long. And it wasn't until he was 5 I found out that was because he had Asperger's. And then I had my third child, who has significant physical issues. He has a heart condition, and he's had 3 open heart surgeries. And he taught me the absolutely amazing gift of acceptance. He was an absolute gift, a challenging gift, but an absolute gift. And he taught me about acceptance. And then the universe thought I was ready for a girl. So my baby is a daughter, and she is oxygen. She is the most placid, easygoing, gentle-spirited, kind-hearted child that was ever put on this planet. So my introduction to motherhood, I wasn't ever planning on 4, but I have 4, and each one of them has been a gift in different ways, and each one of them has taught me something different about myself.
I have so many goosebumps from hearing you talk about that, and so many questions. So one of the first things that you said was that you felt underdone as a mother at age 30. And I became a mama when I was 33, and had my second at just past 35. And that sense of, despite having a relatively easy childhood and loving, although very complex parents. And, there's no, I don't have any trauma to talk about. Mm. But still that sense of what you said of not having the goods to raise my girls the way I want to raise them versus the way that so many previous generations had raised the next generation and the next generation based on the template they had. So it sounds like you had the reflectiveness and the consciousness to take a step back and say, no, this isn't the reality I want. If I'm going to bring new beings into this world, I want to do this differently. And then you're sort of left empty-handed because there's no template. And when the stress starts to hit, I have found that old templates, despite best intentions, old templates, they're still there.
I was going to say, they're not really old templates. They're current templates. And I think, I looked years ago because I was one of those women who just wanted to read every book and devour every single piece of data I could about how to be a good mum. And I went online as a therapist and I checked out how many Google searches there were on parenting. And there were 12 billion things for women to look at about how to parent well. Is it surprising that we are lost? So for me, as I tried to work through this minefield that was supposed to be built in, supposed to come naturally, it's supposed to be fairly effortless, right? Because we're born to be mums, and what a confusing place it is. And I agree with you. At a pleasant, I'm 53 now, at a pleasant time when I looked and went, I want to be the best mum I can be. And I don't know what that means, but I know I can read and devour information. And as I grew and as my kids came into my life, what I learned was to throw away every single piece of information I'd ever been given and to lean into the fact that it's an imperfect job. There is no handbook for us. We show up. I've never met anybody ever who's a parent who doesn't show up every single day absolutely with the intention of really smashing it out of the park. They want to do the very best job they can possibly do. Every single one. I've never, ever, and I work with people from all sorts of backgrounds, but every single one I've ever met has always wanted to do their very best job. And with a good intention, I think that's the beginning of the best kind of parenting, and remembering that we are flawed. And that is a great thing to demonstrate to our children, our capacity to be completely imperfect, to apologize when we need to, and to show up with our values. And it's important. We are here to raise well-rounded, healthy humans who walk this planet being good, decent humans. That's what our job is. And sometimes that means they don't like us. Sometimes that means we screw up really badly. But if we come with a good intention, I think you can achieve amazing things as a parent.
Mm. That idea of having endless resources, of having a kind of, it's not the right word because I don't want to appropriate. I was thinking that sort of bulimic consumption of parenting information and about the right way. And I don't mean to appropriate the term because there's a lot around eating disorders.
The devouring is exactly what you're talking about, right? Like devouring content and consuming content, and really an insatiable appetite for how do I do this right?
What's that about? Because I mean, as I can literally walk out of my office into this big bookcase that we've got here in the hallway and find innumerable books about parenting, and this probably the spines of which I've maybe cracked 3, and I've probably purchased 50 over the years, because being a reader, a voracious reader, being a researcher, being someone who loves to learn, I bought all these books, and it was books when the kids were little, like 1, 2, 3 magic. And, and I very quickly came to realize that none of those things, first of all, they all contradicted each other. Secondly, they all proclaimed to be the only way, which should have tweaked me that there was possibly something unhelpful in this whole idea. And third, what happened in me, and I think is probably more common than we admit, is that every time I would read one of these books, the content would just become more sticks to beat myself with. It would be more things that I was screwing up, more things that I was getting wrong. Oh my God, piling on the guilt that when the kids were 2, I hadn't done whatever. More, and I like to think of myself as a fairly conscious parent. I work with an incredible parenting coach who's been journeying with us for 7 years, and I will probably not let her go until she stops breathing, or, I have grandkids. And even then, I'll probably still be calling Leslie. Which I hope is not for a long time. We'll just say that, put that out into the universe. I can wait another 20 years. But that permission to put the books down, to stop searching for information and validation and reassurance and instructions outside. Because what I found was that none of those books were about my kids. None of those books were about my family. And those books were written with great intention and have really good teachings. And yet my family wasn't static. So I felt like the books were very static things that I couldn't apply in a way. Does that make sense? And when Leslie said to me at one point, make a choice, like stop reading. There's a woman named Dr. Laura Markham who was fantastic. And so I would read her newsletters like every day or every week. And then I would read what Leslie was writing, and I would read these books, and I would read, conscious parenting. And there's another one that I can't remember the name of that's like the Bible of attachment parenting. And it was exhausting and perhaps even more confusing.
And honestly, Anna, for me, I don't believe in self-help. I just really don't believe in self-help. I think it's a crock, to be honest with you. I think if we only needed to read information and absorb it and do it, it'd be fine. But humans are complex. We're complex. I have 4 children. I have a different relationship with each one of them. My dance of connection with my partner, with my children, with my friends, with my family, my dance of connection is an individual dance that is only for that person. It can't be, we can't go, let your child cry for every child. Some children will stop crying immediately. Some children will cry until they fall asleep, completely exhausted, beside themselves. If we choose attachment parenting and we say, always respond to your child, some children will hate us for that because their dance of connection is out of sync. It's about learning and trusting the individual dance of connection with the person in front of you. And one child will be different to another child, might be different to the next child, and our partner, and our mum, and our kid, and our siblings. We have to understand that it's a unique dance for the 2 individuals who are in that relationship. And I think we don't trust that. We used to trust it a long time ago when we were more in tune with so many things. And the more we've got disconnected, and I talk about faux connection, which is this online connection. This feels like a lot of connection, but technically we're not connected at all. We show the highlight reels, and we don't talk about when there's snot on our shirt or our kids pooed their pants and we have to get a hose to wipe it off. We don't talk about that stuff. We only talk about the highlight reels, the smiley faces, the happy birthdays, that everybody dressed in pink. And so women are left feeling massive shame about really normal experiences in their parenting job.
That is one of the core reasons that I created MamaFuel and this podcast, was because I know that even being a savvy communicator, as a professional communicator, even I have fallen into, everybody falls into that trap at some stage. There's someone that we will place higher than us in some way. We will compare and put ourselves beneath other people. And that social media realm it's like a buffet of making yourself feel small, or alternatively, maybe once in a while, make yourself feel bigger, which requires making someone else be smaller. And that shame piece is something that you say you don't believe in self-help. If I look over, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Brené Brown books on that shelf right there. It's a little shelf. It's like my accessory shelf. And I have another one over there and another one out there. The amount of writing that Brené Brown has done around shame and vulnerability, and the importance of that to true connection, and why it's important, and why it can save us, but it's so terrifying. It just really, it in some circles brings shame and vulnerability into the discourse, but in so many it doesn't, because there's that wiring, those templates that you say, they're still current templates of, your father saying, boys don't cry, or, being shamed at school because you were upset about something that the popular kids felt wasn't worthwhile. And we carry all this into our mothering, and then it all gets triggered. And instead of, this has certainly been my experience at times, instead of my mothering being a source of joy and a source of lightness and amazement at this relationship, this individual dance. I love that idea of with each of my girls and my husband and myself, it becomes really fraught with all the things that I'm not doing, air quotes, right. All the ways that I've failed, all the ways that I've come up short, all the damage I'm doing my kids, which is one of the big things that I struggle with whenever I get these new books and I think, right, I'm going to read this. And then I start reading it and I think, oh, I can't read this before bed because then I have nightmares about how all the ways I'm screwing up my kids, right? And they're fine. They'll need therapy when they're older. They all will, But it is so deep, and so many mothers live with this. And I hear from people who listen to the podcast who say, "Oh my God, it's so refreshing to hear true conversations about this stuff." And it matters, And I imagine that in your therapy practice is one of the 5 businesses that you that you delightfully inhabit and support. I imagine that you must see that a lot, no? In mothers, but in parents in general, this sense of, I keep falling down and failing my kids. And so motherhood becomes this bottomless pit of not enoughness.
And I adore Brené Brown. I'm a clinical social worker, which is what Brené Brown is also. I actually think we were separated at birth. I'm absolutely certain of it. She's my twin. And I read a lot of her stuff. But again, when we read it, she never writes with perfection. She talks about her mistakes and her flaws and her falling down. And vulnerability is the sharing of our collective experience. For me, and you've hit on a lot of really good things that I kind of want to poke a bit at. So you talked about being above or below. So that is called self-esteem. Self-esteem is the way I measure myself against you. Am I better than you or worse than you? That's self-esteem. I don't like self-esteem. I don't like it. I don't think it's good for children. We now know that there are issues around kids and self-esteem, and what we need to be fostering is self-acceptance, which is very different to self-esteem. Self-acceptance is, with all my sharp edges, with all my flaws, with all my mistakes, with everything I bring to the table, I see myself and fully accept who I am today without judgment. Have I made mistakes as a parent? Oh my word, have I what? I'm a therapist, I'm 53, I've done more training than you can poke a stick at. I've read as much research as there is possible on it. And I'll still show up and do my thing because I'm a human being having a human experience. I have my mother's history, I have her mother's history. Epigenetically, what pushes through my veins is generations of silent messaging, right? The silent messages that whisper in our ear, those quiet messages that say, you're not good enough, you're not doing this right, who do you think you are? You think you're special, you're not special, you're invisible, you're not good enough, and all the stories that whisper quietly and we don't give voice to because we sit in a pit of shame going, I'm the only one. So we move to this gorgeous space of self-acceptance, number one, where we go, I'm doing my best today. I often put my hand on my heart when I do this because I want to be compassionate, and my tummy usually. And it's kind of this space of leaning in going, you know what, I'm just doing my best. And surely there has to be enough, right? There has to be enough. If my girlfriend came to me hand on heart and said, I screwed up today so badly, I yelled at my kids, I said things I wish I didn't say, and I was doing my best. And I'd be compassionate to her and I'd say to her, sweetie, be kind. We're all just people. Some days are bad days. Some days we're tired. Some days we're worried about the bills being paid or our partner losing their job or somebody's sick. And so we don't have as much in our bucket to give to our kids. And when they come, we snap at them and say, for God's sake. And they're like, oh my God, I'm a terrible mom. It's like, no, you're just a human being having a human experience, and you can be kind to yourself and gentle with yourself and be compassionate. So for me, self-acceptance is probably top of the TP, closely followed by self-compassion, which says, we are all in this tricky life situation. We are all working hard. We all come doing our best every day. And some days, the best we have is not good enough.
Yeah.
It's not. Would we, if our kid comes with a C-, would we sit down and chastise them? We look at the context. Hey, what happened here? Maybe our kid's best is a C-. Mm-hmm. And so we go, you know what? Well done. That is so fantastic. You got a C-. Way to go, you. Maybe our kid normally gets A's, and we go, wow, did something happen here? What was going on for you that you got a C-? Maybe you didn't like the subject. Maybe you didn't understand the subject. Maybe you don't feel good because you were being teased or picked on. If we can do that for others, why can't we do it for ourselves?
Yeah, I just wrote a post this week at time of recording about yesterday, in fact. And if you go to my Instagram, you can see it. It's one of the rare pictures I'll share with my daughter. You can't see her face, but she's curled into my neck. And I talked about that very thing, that, there are days when, as we negotiate into this tween teen period where I just think I have sucked so badly as a mom that I actually said to my husband the other night, sometimes I feel like it would be better if I just wasn't here at this point in her life. Like if I got a job that meant I traveled a lot and I'd come and visit and it would be all like, glad hands, happy families. And then he could handle all of the stuff because he has more humor about it and tends to get less heavy, but he's not a woman, right? And she comes to me with the things that are, about her body changing and difficult conversations with other girls and uncertainty about her appearance and, all of it. And both of the girls are. And so I have these moments where it does feel like it's that bottomless pit of not good enoughness. And yet she'll still fold her, she's 11, she's 5'6". She'll fold her frame as much as she can with her super long legs and curl herself into me and just be there. And it's in those moments where I think, okay, where, that sense of we're all just walking each other home and I can be kinder to myself. And yet the programming, which my ego tells me has been the reason that I got where I am and the way that I've achieved this much and that I can do these things as if I don't know why I'm making this voice, but it kind of sounds like this. And it's like, you need to work hard and you need to be disciplined and they need to sit right at the table. And I can hear my grandparents and my parents and all loving people and kind people in their own ways at different levels because, everybody was different. But it is that being kind to yourself, being willing to be brave enough to be kind to yourself, even when the silent genetic messages are coming through, you don't even know it, and things come out of your mouth, and it's like you've turned into a hand puppet, and someone's moving your mouth for you, and these horrible things are coming out of your mouth that you swore you'd never say, and then you think, hang on, like giving yourself kindness in those moments and giving thanks and grace to those parts of you that have been handed down for generations and generations, and still choosing through that kindness to make a different choice the next time. Because the more I beat myself about, those old patterns coming through, the stronger they get. It's like they thrive on me feeling crappy about myself.
And it's like a fungus. It's like a fungus. It's like a fungus, when it's underground, when it's kept quiet, when it's not seen, heard and valued, then it grows, Mm-hmm. It's funny, I was listening to you talk, and one of the things that my brain was saying to me was, oh dear, one of the things I know that women do extremely well is they model one behavior and they talk a whole different story. So what happens for our children is they go, I am seeing you behave in X, Y, and Z way, and you're telling me something else. And then the child is confused. They go, which one is truth? What you're saying or what you're doing? Which one is truth? So when I work with parents, and I work with a lot of men as well as women, but when I work with people, one of the things I say is, stop trying to fix it. Stop trying to fix it. You know, when your daughter leans into you, and my daughter has done this, and she's, I only have one daughter, bless her. And she's, you know, she's raised with a band of boys. So she's very open. She talks very freely. And she says to me, oh my God, I went to school and they said I was in the itty bitty titty committee. And I said, wow.
They still say that?
Yeah. I said, wow, you do have small breasts. She's like, I know. It's not fair. I feel terrible about it. Like, I'm like, why do you feel terrible? Well, because I have really tiny breasts. I'm like, okay. Anything else apart from the tiny breasts? I said, anything else? I play guitar really well. You do. And I sing beautifully. You tell me I sing beautifully. I'm like, you sing beautifully. I'm really kind. I'm really, really kind. I'm like, you're so kind. I work hard. I'm very academic. You are so academic. So instead of going in and saying, oh, baby, your breasts are fine. Or don't be worried about your breasts. Or who cares about your breasts? It doesn't help her, right? Because, hey, what she really wants as a 16-year-old woman is to have a set of breasts, because in our culture, that's what we're told matters, whether we like it or not. And when I come to try and rescue, I minimize her story. If I can sit with her in her discomfort and I can say, I see you with your little itty bitty titties. And I sit with you going, wow, that's got to hurt, right? That has got to hurt. I think if I was 16 and there was a lot of value on that and my friends all had big breasts, then maybe I would feel really bad. Maybe I would feel maybe not okay. So do you see, when we come in as women, oftentimes our kids poke us in the very place that is unhealed. It's that space that we go, ouch, I don't want you to be bullied. I don't want them to say that you're not physically beautiful. I don't want them to say that you're too big or too small or too tall or too thin or too bright or too stupid. I don't want them to do that, because that reflects my historical pain. So what I want to do is save you. Instead of being able to do what you do, which is let your child collapse into you and say, wow, that hurts. It sounds like that really hurts. If that was said to me, I think it would hurt me too. And I think that's the intuitive part, right, of not knowing, is being able to say, wow, that must be really hard. Like, and not fixing it. We come in telling ourselves we have to know the answer and we've got to make it right. But in actual fact, we just have to be able to tolerate the discomfort. That's life. It's coming for all of us. We all will experience it. And what we have the opportunity to teach is, sometimes life is going to feel unkind and unfair. Where can you go inside of yourself and find your resilience? Because people are going to be cruel. People are going to say and do things. People are going to make you feel sad about yourself. Where's the internal compass that says, in spite of my small breasts, I am still a beautiful singer. In spite of my physical differences, I'm still funny to my core. In spite of, do you know what I mean? And that's the lesson. The lesson is to go, again, into acceptance. You are who you are. You know? You are who you are. My daughter has really curly hair. She would love straight hair. She'd love it. I was born with the straightest hair you ever saw, and all I ever wanted was really curly hair. Yes. You know? Yes. And again, it's about going, you can choose to do something about your straight hair or your curly hair, maybe. But first come from a place of acceptance. I have curly hair, I have straight hair. This isn't good or bad. It's just a thing.
And as you were talking, I was thinking, finding the ability to sit in that discomfort, which, as you so wonderfully say, is coming for you, because it comes for all of us, right? Doing that for our children is such a powerful thing. And when I have found the way of doing it, it shifts things so deeply for all of us. And yet, the place that it is the most difficult for all of us, and in my experience at least, in what I think I see, is that we become the most rigid, and we become the most we become the bearers of that epigenetic transference the most when we see our children in discomfort, and it triggers in us our historical pain and our historical discomfort. And so we will do anything, including take out our child, if it means that we can just make that discomfort stop. And so a lot of adults are walking around completely intolerant of discomfort. I would say most adults walk around intolerant of discomfort, and we then use powering over in the guise of, I'm the adult, I will teach you how things should be. And I think the most common one in our house is how my kids sit at the table and how they eat. Please cut your beans, don't eat your beans in whole so that they touch both of your ears on their way into your mouth. Like, chop the damn vegetables, and it becomes this. And I was like, as a kid, table manners were a massive thing. And my grandmother was very, at least in my experience, very rigid around table manners and very demanding that we would have this kind of quite proper, and I, as an adult, I appreciated it because it meant that I could go into any circle. I moved to London at one point, and I could go to gala dinners and balls and eat at, stately homes. And I knew what to do. I knew the code, right? But is it something that is really that important? If my kids get invited to a stately home, if they care to go, and if they do get invited, are they going to figure out how to cut their beans when they get there? Yeah, they probably are. Is it worth the angst and the stress? No, it's probably not. And yet what's coming up is discomfort for me, that the formatting isn't continuing. It isn't conscious, but it's one of those places where I feel uncomfortable, and so I try to change their behavior by powering over as the adult, by raising my voice, by getting big, and we do this over and over, and it breaks my heart to see parents all the time. And it's not just in the parenting world, it's in work. Like, people are rendered uncomfortable by someone else's confusion or inability to do a task or lateness or whatever. And it becomes this ego power over thing, and we flex our muscles, and it becomes a little bit of I was going to use a very rude expression that I don't know how to replace. An ego swing, we'll call it, and everyone's swinging their egos around. I'll let you imagine what the other word was that I could have used.
I did, yeah.
And it is all because we're so uncomfortable with discomfort and in what it brings up in us. Like, can you imagine how different the world would look right now, right this minute, if every single person could see other people's discomfort and sit with their own and find their resilience? We wouldn't be where we are today. You wouldn't have a shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, of some insane person going in to a different country and killing over 50 people who are praying and peacefully worshiping something that fills their heart and soul. Like, surely that wouldn't happen if we had this resilience, each of us within ourselves. We didn't try so damn hard all the time with our kids and with each other, with our partners, to change the way that they're behaving so we don't have to feel uncomfortable.
Two big issues, two very big separate issues. And I guess because I'm in Australia, and the gentleman who went and gunned down the Muslims was an Australian man, it's catastrophic. It is. I've lived in countries where there was a lot of Muslim people, and I work with people from all religious faiths and all places in life. It's, extremism is everywhere. And unfortunately, because the way our world is currently going, we have now, we can select only to receive information based on what we agree with, instead of having a discourse which we've had historically. So that is, moving to the extreme, moving into the family zone of control. And looking at, when a child has a bean that's too wide for its face, the child is in heaven. The child is like, look at the smile I made with the bean on my face. How cool is this bean on my face? I'm having the best fun with the bean on my face. How many bites will it take for me to get the whole bean into my mouth without using my fork? They're not in a space of going, I want to have bad manners. They're in a space of going, I want to be in my joy. And in my joy right now, this bean is just a dance on my face, and I'm loving it. I think you raise some really important things. And for me personally, I have been screaming from the rooftops. I do a fair bit of stuff, radio and newspapers in Australia. And one of the things that I have been yelling out about recently is dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain It's an extremely important chemical in the brain. It is a chemical that helps us to struggle to achieve a goal. Dopamine is the reward center. So it's the space in the brain where we get all this good feeling when we've done something that was hard. What we know in our current climate is very many children, too many children's dopamine levels are very low because parents won't allow their children to struggle anymore. So parents now intervene in struggle. And, you are a beautiful child because you have long eyelashes. I know you were last in the race, but you're the best and your teacher is terrible. We're teaching grandiosity to children. We're teaching, once upon a time, there was a winner and a loser. Mm-hmm. There's no losers anymore. That's not wholesome or good or helpful. There is already somebody above me. There will always be somebody below me, always in my life. That's not the point, whether I'm above or below. It's that every single human has a value, and we all want to be seen, heard, and valued. Every human who walks the face of this planet wants to be seen, heard, and valued for who I am, again, into acceptance, for who I am in this moment, for my flawed self, for my imperfect self. And instead of coming in and fixing for our children, we have to watch them struggle and take our hands off and go, that looks tough. I remember my 16-year-old son years ago. Oh my God, he's so funny. He's so delicious. He's the 23-year-old now. I remember being in the kitchen and he loved to sing. His voice was intriguing. That's the best I've got word for it right now. He has a good voice, but it was really intriguing the way he sang. And I said to him, wow, it's an interesting sound. And he said to me, you're so bad for my self-esteem. And I said, no, I'm so good for your grounding. You'll never have to guess with me if I'm honest with you. I'm here to help you understand what is true in your world. And sometimes that takes a lot of courage from me because I don't want you to feel discomfort and pain and hurt and upset. I want you to feel good about yourself. But the bottom line is when you leave this home and you go to work, people are going to tell you you're rubbish. And you're going to have to be able to actually manage that. Mm-hmm. So what happened was, reading the story forward, my son went to university. He did film and TV. He's a cameraman. And when he finished university, it's an incredibly competitive field. And he came to see me, I think it was about 4 or 5 months after his degree. And he said, 2/3 of my cohort don't have work. I said, oh, why is that? He said, they can't tolerate the no's. When people don't want them, they can't tolerate it. I said, okay, what about you? He goes, oh, I just keep sending out 6 every single week, 6 to everybody. I don't care how many times they say no to me. It doesn't matter. I said, that's excellent. My son's now 2 years out of uni and he's worked for television, for big movies, for tiny little documentaries. Why? Because he knows how to produce dopamine. And the reason he can produce dopamine is because he had a mother who said, I think a C+ is probably not good enough, buddy, because I think you could do better than that and you're not trying hard enough. And yep, he hated it. He hated it. He really did. And that meant he had to go to a university where he had to start doing a degree he didn't want to do to move himself across to the degree he did want to do. But as a mum, I didn't rescue. I said, it sucks. You've got to do a year at this university doing this degree before you can get into the degree of your choice. But you only got C+ because you didn't work hard. So this is the thing as parents, we have to remember it's not our job to stop the world getting at them. It's to equip our children with the skill set they need. When we talk about resilience, it's about having the skills because life doesn't care. Life doesn't care if you have a disability. Life doesn't care if you have issues. Now, I've got 2 kids with special needs. Nobody cares. The bottom line is, how are you going to be in your world? What are you going to bring to your world? How are you going to cope with rejection? And people who, I remember my son who had heart surgery. We went into a supermarket and he had his shirt off. Australia's very hot. Yeah. Extremely hot. Had his shirt off. He's had 3 open heart surgeries. His chest is a mess. There is no 2 ways about it. But it was a hot day and all the children had their shirts off. A woman came to me in the supermarket and she said, for God's sakes, cover him up. Put a T-shirt on him. And I said, my son looked at me and I said, you are an extremely rude human and you probably need to not talk to me. And I turned to my son, you never have to feel ashamed about your chest. That's survival right there. That's survival. And if she's uncomfortable with your fight to stay alive, that's her business, not yours. It's tricky as a parent, but you know what? That's happened to him hundreds of times in his 18 years on this planet. Hundreds of times. Right? My job is to teach him how to cope when people do that. It's not to stop people doing it, because people are going to do things. As parents, our job is to absolutely give our children what they need to cope. And as a parent, that can be painful, really painful.
Yeah, and it's a dance, I'm finding between letting them, homework is one for me. Because my daughter has dyslexia and dysgraphia and struggles a bit with concentration. And as you say, the world does not care. And so she's in a school where she gets lots of support, which is great, because this is a pivotal time, I feel, so that she continues to get the tools that she's been accumulating so that she can then be even more independent, that she has already made massive strides. And so it's acknowledging that effort, it's setting up the support for her when she needs it right now so that later she won't need it anymore. But then stepping the hell away when I see her not doing her homework, or when, like this weekend, she spends 12 hours, she's 11, 12 hours over the weekend, sat at a computer, fretting and not really knowing how to do things. And I'm stepping away and going, I've offered to help you for 45 minutes and I'm done. I'm not spending my whole weekend. If this is what you want to do, you have until this time, and then we're shutting you down. Like we're going to shut the computer off. You don't have interminable amounts of time. You need to sleep. You're 11, go play. And it is hard to do that, particularly when it goes against those silent whispers. And I would love, in the time that we have left, if we can just talk a little bit about this idea of epigenetics, because it's a field of study that I find completely fascinating, that I imagine many of our listeners may never have heard the word before, because it is quite a new field of study. And it is one that has been mentioned to me in a very personal way recently, because I've had 3 occasions in the last month to remember that we are not static. We are not fixed in the sense of, not in the sense of broken, but in the sense of immovable. And that despite the fact that I have generations of anxious people who came before me and who have poured anxiety into my blood, and I have poured anxiety into my children's blood and continue to, because this is a dance for me, it doesn't mean that they have to be anxious. It doesn't mean that I have to stay anxious. It doesn't mean that this has to be continued. And so how do we talk to us a little bit about how we're not fixed, about how epigenetics comes into play, and how we can, even though we don't have a template for the way we want things to be and evolve to, how can we get there?
And I'm searching for a quote for you, because I have the most amazing quote for you. Epigenetics for me, of course, if you think how animals evolve, humans evolve, we have generationally changed. We learn more, we understand more, we're able to do things differently. I've got a gorgeous quote for you at the end of this, which is going to be, I've just found it. Hopefully I've found it, because I want to read it to you.
Cool, and we'll share it in the show.
So basically, we have to understand that there are some core things. When I work with new mums, so mums will come with a really difficult baby at the age of 3 to 5, and they'll be like, he's angry, usually boys, either anxious or angry. He cries, she's too frightened, and they tell me the story of the child. And I say, okay, tell me about your pregnancy. And they'll say, I was really jumpy, I was really scared, I was really angry, I was frustrated, there was this, there was that going on. We now know that if a mother's heart rate is higher during her pregnancy, that the baby's baseline heart rate is higher when it's born. This is the intergenerational handing down of data. It sits in our muscles, in our blood. This is why disease, goes through generation after generation after generation. But it's not just disease. You might have a family of ragers who are angry, and they might say they're passionate, but they have that as an undercurrent, or a family that have really held in tight and quiet and pulled close. And that is handed down generation after generation after generation. That's our epigenetics. But, and here's the thing, when I talk about, we try and teach our children, it is not a foregone conclusion. At any given time, we can change it. And I'm going to read one of my favorite quotes in the world about this. And this, to me, is the personal manifesto of my life. It's written by a guy I've done a lot of training with called Terry Real. And this is what he says. Family dysfunction rolls down from generation to generation like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path, until one person in one generation has the courage to turn and to face the flames. That person brings peace to their ancestors and spares the children that follow. It's not a foregone conclusion. We can change the story, but it takes courage to face the flames of our history. You know, our grandma wanted us to be polite and sit and eat with our knives and forks, to not have our elbows on the table, because that was a reflection of how good she was. It had nothing to do with us. And so our mothers did it because, hey, guess what? That's what they were taught. And so when we sit at the table, even when we don't, you know, you say this yourself, you know, the beans are coming at the side of their face. I'm like, hey, eat your beans, right? And we don't even know why. It's like, why am I asking you to do that? Are you really going to go to a gala ball and not know how to eat? Of course you are. But epigenetically, we hand on the blueprint that says it's got to be this way. We have to be discerning as humans and decide, what do I stand for? What is really truth to me? You know, we still have to raise decent humans, but what is the measurement of decent? For me, my kids would open up a door for an elderly person. They would run across a car park and take their bags and ask, can I help you get these to the car? There's a gorgeous Indian man in my community called Neil. He's delicious. He has dementia. My very white 20-year-old son with blonde hair, Neil thinks is his son. So Neil said to me, have you met Jack? He's my boy. And I'm like, he's really beautiful, Neil. He's a really good boy. Do I need to tell Neil he's wrong? No. Does my son need to feel bad? My son goes, do you know, I love that Neil thinks I'm his son. Isn't that really cool? So, do you know, we don't have to follow the rules. We have to be kind, compassionate. We have to be accepting. We have to stand tall and go, sometimes life is hard, and sometimes we have to work really hard to get to the other side. Like your daughter with her, you know, her difficulties around learning. It's like, I see your difficulties. That sucks. But you still have to go to school and you still have to learn, and you have an added difficulty. Right? But that's not a cross that you carry going, and this is why I don't do well. It's a thing of going, in spite of the fact that I have dyslexia and dyspraxia, despite the fact that I have Asperger's or a heart condition, or I have Down syndrome, or whatever, you know, whatever, in spite of the traumatic history, in spite of that, I get to choose, as Terry Real said, to turn around and face the flames and change the story of our history for the generation that follows. And that truly is, for me, is what motherhood, parenting is truly about. The courage to face the flames. And it's not easy, but it's so rewarding when you do.
And what a great place for us to wrap our conversation, that I feel deeply is perhaps only the part one of many conversations. But, you know, what you have just said, I wanted to maybe just tack on that if anyone listening feels like maybe you have not faced the flames, but you want to, and your children are already in progress, like they're humans who are already there. And if, like me and like many people, you feel like, oh God, you know, here I am, you know, being rigid about bean smiles or farting at the table or whatever, all the things that I get all offended and rigid about. It is not too late to turn and face that fire and go, no, you know what? No. And to say to your kids, I don't want to, you know what? I don't want to have these conversations anymore. This isn't what's important to me is that we have a relaxed meal instead of everybody feeling crappy because mommy's being all uber stressed about table manners, or daddy's getting, my husband has a bugbear where it drives him bananas if my daughter, when she's doing her homework, if she lays on the table, she puts like her left arm down and she puts her head on it and goes, sit up, you can't do math that way. And I'm just looking at him going, why can't she do math that way? Of course she can do math that way. But then the voice inside is like, and she can eat her beans like she wants to as well, sweetheart. So
if we can come in with our kids and go, you know what, it makes me so uncomfortable when you lean on your arms, because I used to believe that if you didn't sit up straight, you couldn't learn, because that's what people told me. Or, I notice when you eat your beans, it reminds me of when my grandmother used to yell at the table about eating right. We can share from an honest place. And what an absolute learning moment for us and for them. When we step into our vulnerability and actually label the story for what it is. Like the power from the story goes poof, because then what happens is the kid goes, hey, Mum, I notice when I eat my beans with a smiley face, it makes you so uncomfortable. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, Mum. I'll try and chop the beans because I don't want you to be uncomfortable when I'm eating.
Oh, yeah, and it's so broadly applicable, right, to choices that children make as they choose their clothing, to how they what they do and don't want to wear for different temperatures outside, and who they hang out with, and how they choose to commit or not commit, motivate and not be motivated. And I think that piece about we're raising children with very low levels of dopamine is one that I would love to explore with you further in another conversation. But if people would like to find you in one of the 5 professional iterations that you have in your life, where or would like to just read some of the amazing articles you've written or watch the interviews you've done on the telly, where can people find
you? Type my name into Google and you'll get about 10 pages of different things that I've done. So just go and take a look. And to close off and to be really important, here's the thing: be kind and compassionate to you. Be accepting of you. If you come from that space, everything else is better. It's so much better. And at the end of the day, everybody is doing their best. I have my conscious ink on. It says unapologetically me. It's not real tattoo. It's a conscious. It's called conscious ink. It says unapologetically me. And I think we need to not apologize for who we are. Stand tall with your head up, knowing you did your best. Just know you did your best and be kind. Everybody wins when you do that. Everybody.
And you will still achieve, and you will still grow, and you will still evolve, and opportunities will still come if you're not beating yourself 24/7 with a fist full of sticks. More will come.
More. Yeah. Not and you will still, but more than you could possibly imagine. When you remove the musts and the shoulds and the have-tos and you drop those down, you will be stunned at what will come.
And then the practice becomes in learning how to receive, which is
another story,
another conversation. So maybe that needs to be the dopamine piece, the how to receive, and how we can model that for our kids. Debbi, it's such a delight to speak to you and to start my day with this conversation. And I cannot wait to share it with everyone else. Thank you for your wisdom and your vulnerability and frankness and the work you do in this world.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. We'll talk soon. Oh, wow. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as Debbi and I did. We were chatting when it was over about how meaningful it is to establish heart-to-heart connection, and I certainly felt it in that exchange, and I hope you did too. I would love to enjoy more heart-to-heart connection. Last episode, I invited some of you to come in and try a little experiment with me where I offered to do a written portrait of 5 incredible mamas from around the world in exchange for some feedback. And I'm delighted to say that those 5 spots have been filled. And I'm excited about working with the 5 mamas who stepped forward to be seen and witnessed in that way. I would love to hear from you personally. If you get a second to either write a review or send me an email, that makes me so happy. The email is Anne, ANNE, at MamaFuel, MamaFuel.me. And I would love to know what you got from today's conversation or what you get from any episode of MamaFuel, the podcast, because there's so much that I have in store for you. And it helps me to know if these conversations land with you as much as they land in my heart. So don't hesitate. If you get a sec, drop me an email at Anne, ANNE, at MamaFuel.me and tell me what's on your heart and what's going on and how these messages are landing with you, because there's so much more coming and I can't wait to share it. I hope you have a gorgeous evening, day, sleep, week, wherever you are, and I'll see you soon.
That's it for this episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more conversation sharing and real mama talk happening in our private Facebook group. You can join that totally free by going to www.thecenteredmamaproject.com/Facebook, or just go to Facebook and type facebook.com/mamafuel.me, or just search mamafuel.me and you'll find us there. Make sure you say hi when you get in there. If you like this episode, or if you know a mama who could use a little bit of Mama Fuel, I would love for you to share this episode and to rate it and leave a review. That will help us get this episode into more mamas' ears, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. Every comment helps, and it is always such a delight to hear from you. Thanks, and bye for now.